Hello everybody, this is Cassidy with Oshava.com. I'm going to get right to it and create a composition, sparing you from any long intros. I'm going to name this new composition color control. Now we have a new comp, name color control. Now let's create an adjustment layer by right-clicking and selecting adjustment layer on the left-hand side of the timeline window. So you see, we have an adjustment layer pop up. Let's rename that because we want to classify this adjustment layer. So this adjustment layer will just be one of our color control options. What we need to do is create a solid, and I'm just going to create, you can see our fill color is just a white color. That doesn't matter. I'm going to go up here and create a shape layer with this ellipsis tool here, and we can see we need to drag the anchor point to the center so our shape layer has an actual center point, and we can do that by clicking the pan behind tool and dragging the anchor point to the center. Let's rename this layer color 1. So our shape layer now has a name, color 1. I'm going to enable the title action save to give me an indication of where the middle of the composition is so I can balance these two shape layers. Just hit Command D to duplicate a layer. You can always click on a layer and hit Command D and it will duplicate it. Now, just to be proper and organized, I'm going to name our two shape layers so we can identify them a little easier. So these two shape layers are going to help us identify and view the expression that we are going to create using two adjustment layers. I'm going to hit Command D, hold down Shift, so I can drag this over without it moving up and down in an imperfect manner, and just modify the text to say color 2. So now we have two shape layers and two text layers. This is really only for viewing our expressions as we are setting up our After Effects project. Now I mentioned we needed two adjustment layers for this concept to work. So I'm going to rename color control 1. Now let's make sure our effects controls panel is open. If you don't see it, you can just come down here and make sure that's checked. A lot of the times After Effects will open up and you won't see that. Now let's right-click in the effects controls and open up expression controls, color control. Let's rename this color control 1. Click on your shape layer, color control 1, and let's add a fill effect. And just double click because your layer is selected. That will add an effect to that layer. I'm going to drag my panel over here so it's closer to the action. So next step, we need to get to the expression controls for the fill color. So I'm going to hit E for effect, and you'll see the fill color pop up. And there's our stopwatch for color. I'm going to option click, which is very important, to initiate goals. Now that I have that open, I can go to my color control adjustment layer and lock, absolutely lock the effects control. Otherwise it'll disappear and you'll go crazy as you're clicking around trying to figure out why it's disappearing. Let's go back to our shape layer and click on our expression pick whip and drag it over the color attribute of the color control 1. Now you can see we've changed the expression without doing any math. So let's test it out, see if it worked. As you can see, our color 1 layer is definitely being stimulated by our, I'm going to hit EE to reveal only the expression layer. That's a nice little shortcut. Now let's create another adjustment layer for our color 2. Drag that down underneath or over the top of our color 1 control and name it color control 2. Always be conspicuous in AE. And I like to do that by adding comments so I can remind myself what's what. So I'm just going to name this blue this comment blue, and then put another comment in. Name that one orange. Now that we have our new adjustment layer, we haven't added the expression control yet. We have one on our first layer, but now we need to add an expression control on our second adjustment layer. So right click, go to color control, and you can also set the color before you set the expression up. So I'm just gonna pick an apricotic cantaloupe color. It's a good idea to be garrulous in learning material. Now that we've set up our adjustment layer, we can go back to our color 2 shape layer. I'm just gonna this time drag. There's multiple ways to add effects. I'm gonna drag this time onto the shape layer. We can see we have our fill. I'm going to hit E for effect and go back down to our adjustment layer and make sure this bastard is locked. Now we can come down to our color, hold down Option and click to initiate our expression control. Pick whip this sucker, put it on our new color control, which is our color control 2. And you can see our expression is now working. Gonna hit EE to reveal only the expression. Now this After Effects file is really going to shine once we append all of the fill color attributes on all the layers to our color control composition. I'm just renaming these text layers something different so they're not confusing with our shape layers. So now that we have set up our color control composition, we can start to have some fun. Let's start stimulating some other compositions in our After Effects template. I feel like this browser template could use some stimulation. Now, this is a template that I'm working on, which is obviously a customizable browser animation that I'm working on with my buddy Ryan, where you can add your own URL and website screenshot. So you can see this background layer that I have. Right now it's just a gradient. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but I really want to use that customizable fill color that we worked so arduously on to set up. So let's add a fill effect to our background layer. And you know what we're gonna do. First, let's organize this. I'm gonna drag our global color control comp all the way to the left, and our web browser animation that we're working with. So these are just side by side. So let's make sure our first color control is selected and lock it so it stays up at the top. And what's going on here? Well, I'm just gonna hit E for effect. That'll clean things up. Bam. You can see our fill color. Option click. Grab that pick whip and punch the keyboard like I just did. That way you know for sure that the expression is working. I think it's a little too light blue. We're gonna mute it a little bit more. Maybe go for a more cerulean pale blue. It's a little bit too gleaming and lustrous for my tastes. Ah, that's the ticket. Now, what can we use our color control 2 for? I have an idea. How about the cursor? Let's go into the other nested composition. You can see I have a cursor wiping across frame to reveal our text here, and that's set up by an expression. A really cool expression, but more on that later. Let's find our stroke. This was a shape layer created with the pen tool. So I'm going to go back to our color control and make sure our color control 2 layer is locked and loaded. Let's get rid of you. That's color control 1. We want color control 2. There we go. Come back to our composition. Where are you? I'm dragging this over here so it's closer to the mathematical action. Option click our color attribute and drag it over the top of our color 2 control. and hit enter. Go back to our main composition. We can see it's been updated. So now we have our expressions set up in 2 compositions. So now you can see how this could be extremely valuable if you set up your color control to dictate and set a decree that all your layers must follow you. For the sake of your sanity, when your client says, "Can you change this color to this color?" And instead of screaming F you can just use your color controls. And you can satisfy them with a particular color, and you can render it out and show them that their choice is wrong, that their color choice will never work in any scenario in the history of the world. Now, here's some other creative things you can do. You can even use this setup with vector logos. And you probably wouldn't do this in the real world because obviously brands have their own colors, but again, the goal is to have every single layer that has a color set up to be wielded, where our color control layer exercises its power, authority, and influence over all color attributes, ruling and dominating them with force and influence. Now you can see I have separated our 1 vector logo into 2 so we can apply our color expression to our Oshava vector logo. I'm going to add a fill. And we'll add another fill effect on our second layer. Now let's select our first layer and hit E for effect. Option click color, drag the pick whip, put it on our first adjustment layer color control, and let's test this thing out. And let's select our first color control, our blue color here, hit E for fill, option click color, drag the pick whip up to our color control. And as you can see now, all of our comps reflect the colors that are being represented in our color control composition. Our background and our cursor, along with the logo pieces. As you can see, expressions are quite impressive, and if you set up your projects right, can save your life, or at least make your life uncomplicated when you're dealing with a bazillion compositions inside After Effects, and you know that color may be a variable. And when anything is capable of being varied or changed inside After Effects, oh my goodness, call upon expressions. Because sure enough, you will deviate from the usual type as a motion graphic artist. And these templates are laden with color inclusivity.